James Heenan here, local historian. I'm going to talk to you about St.Ruadhán, the patron saint of Lorrha. This video is going to mark his feast day, the 15th of April, using historical sources, folklore and archaeological evidence. Behind me here we see the 10th, 11th century Dovlik, or the Great Stone Church of Lorrha. 450 years prior to this, St.Ruadhán would have built his timber church here in Lorrha. So really what we're going to do, we're going to look at Ireland, I suppose, before St.Ruadhán and what caused this great Christian expansion in Ireland itself. So what was happening in Ireland prior to the Christianisation of the island? We know from 300 to 550 AD there was an upsurge in agriculture, and this is through the evidence of pollen analysis. We know that there was a decrease in tree species with an increase in plant species such as ribswort plantain, plants that actually grow in cultivated or disturbed soils. So I suppose at the time Ireland was actually trading with Rome and Britain, and through trade there was the spread of ideas such as agricultural technologies. And one of these technologies was the coulter plough. Basically the coulter is a knife that passes through the topsoil and allows the plough to pass on through and plough itself. So this technology would have been adapted into Ireland. In Britain at the time, a lot of fruits and vegetables were actually imported from Europe and grown. Vegetables such as cabbage, carrots, fruits such as plums, damsons were all imported into Britain. These in turn would have been imported into Ireland, I suppose increasing the health and the longevity of the people of Ireland. With these new farming practices such as grain production and cattle rearing, we see from 550 AD onwards the building of ring forts, defended homesteads. Now typically a ring fort was 30 metres in diameter with an enclosure of an earthen bank or a stone wall or a palisade of timber or blackthorn. Usually there were single enclosures, but there are examples of double and triple enclosures. There were 47,000 anglicised versions of the name fort, such as Doon, Liss, Ra, Cashel, Cahir. Behind me here is the remains of Ratnagrana, the Fort of the Sun. This is just south of Lorrha village and will be contemporary with the monastery of St.Ruadhán in Lorrha. So I suppose at the time not only had we the spread of agricultural ideas and the building of these homesteads, we also had the introduction of this new religion called Christianity. I'm here at St.Ruadhán's Church, Lorrha, at the stained glass window of St. Patrick. Ireland was not only trading with Britain at the time, it was also raiding it. And through one of these raids, they captured a boy named Patricius, or Patrick, who later became St. Patrick, who established the Christian faith in Ireland. Prior to this, a man named Palladius was sent to Ireland by Pope Celestine to spread the faith. Now, he mainly spread the faith up around North Leinster or Meath. Through St. Patrick's Confessio, we know that the Irish at the time were sun worshippers, and that basically the faith at the time was not spread through miracles, but rather through word of mouth. I'm here at the stained glass window of St.Ruadhán. St. Patrick would have been the first generation church founder in Ireland. St. Bridget would have belonged to the second generation, while St. Ruadhán would have belonged to the third generation. We know by the end of the 6th century AD, all of Ireland was converted to Christianity. So now let's begin the story of St.Ruadhán. It is said that St.Ruadhán is of royal descent. Some genealogists say that he descended from the royal house of Munster, from the Ognacht, the traditional kings of Munster. Others say from a royal house in Connacht. His father, Fergus Byrne, was from the territory Ossory, between Munster and Leinster. His mother's name was Ma Enges Bue. He had sisters, Rúdna and Quail, and there's also a mention of a sister, Dari. So Ruadhán, as a young man, would have went to study under St. Finian of Clonard. He would have studied subjects like Greek grammar, scriptures and astrology. He was known as one of the 12 apostles of Ireland, and that would have included St. Brendan of Birr, St. Brendan of Clonfert, St. Kieran of Clonmacnoise, Kieran the Elder, St. Columba of Terraglass. Upon completion of his vows, St.Ruadhán moved southwards into Munster, into a territory known as Muskerry Tira, or nowadays as we know as Ormond. So I'm just on a hill here overlooking Ruadhán. In the distance is the Friar's Loch, probably not visible on the video. St.Ruadhán initially set up his church in Kilruadhán, but upon angelic advice actually moved towards Lorrha, in which a boar fled on his approach. I suppose symbolic of the Christian faith replacing the old pagan faith. Now St.Ruadhán himself was actually supposed to have stood on a hill in Lorrha with view of the Friar's Loch and knelt on a stone, leaving the imprint of his knee in the stone. Now that could have been here, or it could have been over in Grange, or it could have been in Portland. We have lots of hills encircling Lorrha. Now at the time St. Brendan had established a church, a place known as Tulloch Brendan. So I suppose the bells of his church and the bells of St. Ruadhán's church were ringing at the same time and adding confusion. So St. Brendan decided to leave and move across the Shannon, where he set up his church in Clonfert. So I'm here at St. Ruadhán's 6th century well. The first thing St. Ruadhán would have done when he came to Lorrha would be to Christianise pagan sites. So there may have been a pagan spring here, and St. Ruadhán would have Christianised this and established this well here. Now in the 19th century, a 9th century bell was actually found in this well, and unfortunately is in the British Museum. Now just going back to St. Ruadhán, after he established his church here in Lorrha, he moved north, establishing churches and performing miracles. One miracle tells of St. Ruadhán bringing back to life a dead chieftain. This chieftain was so grateful that he gave St. Ruadhán his town of Slanor. St. Ruadhán, when he came back to Munster, more miracles were attributed to him. One story tells of a student near Emily who was studying medicine. St. Ruadhán blessed his hands, his eyes and his mind, and that student became proficient in that art. Another story tells of St. Ruadhán being summoned by St. Brendan to bring from the bottom of the Shannon estuary a sunken boat. St. Ruadhán brought up this sunken boat. A valuable passenger was on this boat, was the son of the King of Britons, and St. Ruadhán actually brought him back to life. So now we look at a local little story about the miracle of St. Ruadhán. So this story tells of a miracle at Palace Rathcabbin. St. Ruadhán was passing by when 12 lepers were looking for alms. St. Ruadhán grabbed his staff, struck the ground, and water rushed up, forming a pool. The lepers bathed in the pool and were actually cured. To this day, this pool is known as St. Ruadhán's Pool. Another tale tells of a deer leaving a wood near sunset to go into the monastery of St. Ruadhán to be milked. After being milked, this deer would run a considerable distance to the monastery of St. Coleman, Kilcoman in County Offaly. Another very interesting tale tells the story of a linden tree. A linden tree, also known as a lime tree, are a long-living species and have curative properties. St. Ruadhán was said to have a linden tree here at Lorrha that produced a magical liqueur from the 9th hour to the hour before sunset. This liqueur had twice the strength of food and water. Now other monks in other monasteries were very jealous of this and reported this to St. Finian of Clonard, St. Ruadhán's master. St. Finian with his disciples went to Lorrha. On approach to the gateway to Lorrha, one of his disciples asked St. Finian to make the sign of the cross at the linden tree, in which St. Finian did so. Now St. Ruadhán, hearing the arrival of St. Finian, sent one of his monks to the linden tree. When he went to the linden tree, went to pick up the basin, there was actually no liqueur in it. Went back to St. Ruadhán and told him. St. Ruadhán said God will provide and sent him to the holy well in Lorrha. The monk went to the well, filled the basin to the brim, and with that also saw a big salmon in the well, which he took back. The water in the well actually took on the magical properties of this liqueur from the linden tree. At the feast that evening, St. Finian had spotted that the water had the magical properties of this liqueur from the linden tree and actually blessed it and turned it back to water. Some of his disciples said to St. Finian to go and actually make the sign of the cross at the holy well. St. Finian replied, "Do not make this holy man St. Ruadhán unhappy." He asked St. Ruadhán to live the life of other monks from other monasteries, in which St.Ruadhán replied that he would. On that, St. Finian said to St.Ruadhán, he said that may your lands be always fertile, may you have copious fruits, and may you never have to spread fertilizer on your lands. We've all heard the story of St. Patrick banishing a monster to the Friar's Loch here behind me. Another tale tells the story of St. Ruadhán banishing 2 demons to the Friar's Loch. And the story goes that a servant of the monastery was bringing milk from the cow house to the monastery, and for 7 evenings in a row this milk would be spilt. St. Ruadhán was curious to the cause of this and lied in wait. That evening he spotted 2 demons with hammers hitting the sides of the vessels and causing them to fall broken to the ground. St. Ruadhán summoned these 2 demons and asked why they would carry out such an act against the servant of God. The demons replied, the servant of God has willed this upon him. With that, St. Ruadhán banished the 2 demons to the Friar's Loch here behind me. So this is probably one of the most famous stories of St. Ruadhán, the Cursing of Tara. At the time, High King Diarmaid ruled the country. He set his men around Ireland to carry out his laws. So one of his laws was basically his men would carry a spear horizontal and it had to fit through the doorways of the forts. He sent his Sergeant Blacklaw down to the home of Age Gaira in Hymany, which would be west of the Shannon here. Now Age wasn't at home, so his men carrying out the laws of the king tried the spear and it wouldn't fit through, so they broke down the doorway. Age came back and was furious and actually slew Blacklaw. So basically that wasn't a thing that you done, was actually kill the right hand man of the High King of Ireland. So Age fled to Wales. Diarmaid found out that he had absconded to Wales, sent word over, and the King of Wales, fearing Diarmaid, sent Age back to Ireland. Now Age actually found sanctuary in St. Ruadhán's monastery here in Lorrha. Now the High King, finding out that Age was here in Lorrha, marched on Lorrha with his men, approached the monastery, stormed in the door and demanded St. Ruadhán actually give back Age. Now St. Ruadhán had actually hidden Age in a secret little cellar in the ground. When the High King came in, he was actually standing over this cellar. So demanding where Age was, St. Ruadhán replied, well, if he's not under your feet, I don't know where he is. So the High King left. So as he left, he pondered and he thought, a holy man wouldn't lie. So next thing he twigged it, that Age was actually hiding in the monastery. So he went in, opened the trapdoor and pulled out Age and actually dragged him back to Tara. So what we'll do now, we're actually going to read through the Cursing of Tara. So St. Ruadhán marched on Tara with St. Brendan of Birr. This is taken from the book of Lismore. The king is reported as saying to the abbot, for this act which you do, Ruadhán, you shall receive chastisement from the Holy Trinity. Thy parish shall be the first in Ireland to apostatize. The abbot replies, thy kingdom shall fail sooner, and of thy seed no one shall ever reign. The king answers, thy chosen place will be a desert, and swine shall root it with their snouts. The abbot says, this thy royal city of Tara, from which the kingdom of Ireland has been ruled during many years, shall be empty before 100 years. The king says, thy body from this day shall bear a mark, and one of thy members shall perish, and one of thy eyes shall never see the light. The abbot replies, thy body shall be butchered by thy enemies, and thy members shall be separated from each other. The king replies, a wild boar with its teeth shall uproot thy tombstone. Ruadhán answers, thy arm which is not raised before me shall not be buried with thy body, but a day will come when a man shall cast it from his trowel into the manure heap of his sheep. The king answers, the man about whom is our dispute, take him with you. But in thy church, Ruadhán, may the alarm cry sound at noon always, and even thou all Ireland be at peace, be thy church's portal a scene of war always. The account adds, and from that moment to this, the same is fulfilled. So that was the story of St. Ruadhán and the Cursing of Tara. And back here at the Dovlick, or the Great Stone Church of Lorrha. Originally, as I was saying earlier, there would have been a timber church here. Now going back to 550 AD, St. Ruadhán, when he founded his monastic settlement here, the original church would have been of wattle and post, infilled with sods, organic material or clay. Later replaced by a timber church known as a jar chock, or an oak house. Now the church itself and the cemetery tended to be to the east of the enclosure, and to the west you would have the activities and all the industries. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at different sections in this monastic settlement. So a monastic settlement such as Lorrha would be divided into three distinct areas: Sanctus, holy place; Sanctior, the holier place; and Sanctissimus, the holiest place. Each of these areas was divided by an earthen bank. Now here behind me we see an earthen bank, and this was the outermost enclosure for the monastic settlement in Lorrha. Now I'm here standing in the Sanctus here, and this was the area where a lot of the activity of the monastery happened. You would have had the processing of grain, you would have had metal working, and you would have had ale brewing. In 2002, archaeologists discovered 3 corn drying kilns and a well. In these corn drying kilns they discovered barley, oat, to a lesser extent wheat and weed. But these corn drying kilns date from around 550 to 620 AD, so are very contemporary with the story of St.Ruadhán here in Lorrha. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at the Sanctior. I'm now in the Sanctior, or the holier place. This earthen bank behind me here would divide the Sanctior and the Sanctus. The Sanctior would be an area where the monks would have resided in their cells. So what we're going to do, we're going to move inwards now, and we're going to look at the Sanctissimus. So obviously there's no earthen bank here, but this road curves and follows the original earthen bank that was here. To my right, inside this, then you would have had the Sanctissimus. The Sanctissimus is actually where I introduced the talk when we talked about the Dovlik. So we're going to take one more trip back into the Sanctissimus. So I'm back here for a third time. Behind me here is the 10th, 11th century Dovlik. I'm actually sitting on the base of a high cross dating to the late 700s, early 800s, dedicated to St.Ruadhán. This would replicate an earlier timber high cross. So I'm in the Sanctissimus, the holiest of holy. So in the Sanctissimus you would have had your church, your jar chock, your oak house, you would have your timber high cross, you would have had your shrine house dedicated to saints or relic houses, you would have had your baptismal font, and at a much later stage then you would have had your round tower. Now, local people, the tradition here in Lorrha is that St.Ruadhán is actually buried at this high cross. High crosses weren't said to be grave markers, but if St.Ruadhán was buried anywhere, maybe he's buried in the grounds of the Dovlik here behind me. Now St.Ruadhán himself died in the year 584 AD on the 15th of April. His anniversary is marked with the calling of the cuckoo, and I'm going to leave you with this verse from the calendar of Angus. An excellent flame that wanes not, he vanquished urgent desires. Fair was the precious gem, Ruadhán, lamp of Lorrha.